Getting set up here, folks. Check, check, check one, check two, check three. All right, I think we are good to go. Hey, folks, welcome to Curious Formula. This is Curious Thoughts and Curious Tuesdays. We're here to talk a little bit about um, whether red states or blue states do better in terms of governance. Folks, we are so entwined, so into the presidential race as to which party is going to run Washington, D.C., both in terms of the presidency and in terms of uh, the Senate and the House of Representatives. And we're fearful about the makeup of the court. We always and we debate, right? Who's better for the nation? Who's better to run the federal government, the Republican Party or the Democratic Party? And as far as I can go back in time, in terms of being a young man, I can remember us talking and debating these issues as to, well, Democrats are better when it comes to social programs, and Republicans are better on defense, and Republicans are supposedly better on the economy. No, Democrats are better on the economy because when Republicans are in office, they talk about austerity, but they run up the deficit and the debt, and Democrats lower the deficit, and then Republicans say that's not true because by cutting taxes, we create more jobs, and more jobs been created under the Republican administration. We always go through the top thing. We don't really look at the states and looking at how which party does better in running states. And I came across a really good article. First of all, thank you all for watching. And if you haven't watched, I'm sure you'll catch it on the back end. Thank you all for being here. Make sure you subscribe and like and comment here. Go to my TikTok channel, curious_formula. Go to that's my other big platform, I guess you could say. And please subscribe, like, and comment there. We go live there as well every day. And we're going to start trying to go live here on YouTube. This channel, we need to build it up. We have 22 videos that I think you will like, some lives and some other platforms and other things that we're talking about in terms of education, mostly politics, but governance and policy will be the hallmark here. The key for all of us here is that you got to come here with receipts. You can't come here and just throw out rhetoric. Biden 2024, Trump 2024, RFK Jr. 2024, none of the above 2024. You got to come here with data, research, hopefully primary sources, but at the very least secondary sources, polling, something that supports your position. And please try to refrain from getting it from the echo chamber that is MSNBC or CNN or Fox Entertainment or Newsmax or News Nation. We want to get some good, honest discussion. We want people to walk a mile in each other's shoes. We want you all to try to discuss, even if it doesn't change your mind. Refrain from trolling, calling people idiots or unintelligent or dumb for having beliefs that are the polar opposite in many cases of yours. And let's just have honest, good discussion and get us back to a manageable middle where we can hopefully have discussion that is not filled with vile and disagreements to the point where we can't come back from it. So it's destroying America. It's destroying our political process. And on these platforms that I am the proud holder of and the proud moderator and sponsor of, we want to try to get away from that and have honest discussions that go deep and go wide and tackle things that we don't talk about. So in Daily Cost, and my disclaimer is that I know Daily Cost is a progressive Democrat run platform. I still think it's good to read and look at platforms, whether you agree with them or not, just to, again, get your mind out of, what do I call this? I call this stop being a slave to the almighty algorithm and look at another perspective. There's a good article written by Mark Sumner there, and I put the link in the body of what the discussion is, description of this particular live. And it's called The Stark Difference Between How Democrats and Republicans Run States. And it was published on May 13th on that particular site. But I think it's interesting because, there was a big debate that Ron DeSantis had with Governor Gavin Newsom from California, sort of which state was better, California or Florida. And, I don't know why DeSantis chose to debate Gavin Newsom when he was running for president. But the results of the DeSantis campaign show that maybe he should have spent some more time in Iowa and New Hampshire than getting a national sort of debate with Gavin Newsom and CNN, which really didn't help him in his standing at all, politically, nationally, or I think even in terms of him running in 2028. But be that as it may, I digress. They talked about sort of, which state was doing better. And I actually thought it was a pretty good debate and discussion, even though they took jabs at each other. Obviously, Biden came into that discussion, but they really were talking about how their states were performing and comparing to the, obviously DeSantis was saying how Florida has an increase in population while California is losing population. He talked about the homeless problem, talked about the border problem that California has, and Gavin Newsom pointed out to the amount of anti-democratic laws in terms of voting that reared its head in the state of Florida, the stand your ground law, the amount of shootings and murders that happened there, and they debated taxes and the line. But I thought it was a good thing for people to see people discussing how states are actually doing under Republican control and Democratic control. And this is what this article talks about. The stark difference between how Democrats and Republicans run states. I just kind of want to go through. It's not a long article, but it points some real specific state things that some states are doing that other states are not doing that are run by Republicans. And look no further than, so it starts as saying at the start of 2024, there were 28 state legislatures entirely under Republican control and 20 under Democratic control. And of these, many have majorities where one party has overwhelming control, like West Virginia, where there are 88 Republicans and only 10 Democrats, or Massachusetts, with 134 Democrats and 25 Republicans. And when voters elect such lopsided majorities, they give one party the power to enact their own platform. Indeed, if you look at other states like New Jersey is another state where you have a Democratic governor and Democrats in charge of both houses of the legislature by pretty large margins. In these situations, more than any other, parties express themselves to the detriment of constituents' lives. And with many state legislatures wrapping up their 23 to 24 sessions, here are a couple of examples of what voters get for their partisan investment. One state got guns and a culture war, and the other got education, transportation, and housing. And the two states that they look at, I think, are Colorado and Tennessee. And they do make for some stark differences. I don't sort of care which side of the aisle you look at in terms of who you think fits your ideological slant. I think the real measurement is what actually was done pragmatically that improved the lives of the constituents and the residents that these members of these legislatures are responsible for and oversee and have to go home and explain what they did in the state capitol. So Colorado, in Colorado, the 74th General Assembly contains 69 Democrats, 23 in the Senate, 46 in the House, and 31 Republicans, 12 in the Senate, 19 in the House. That's a pretty nice size differential of power. But together with Democratic Governor Jared Polis, this session gave Democrats an opportunity to execute on issues they had campaigned on in this cycle, as well as follow up on Democratic victories from the previous session. So as Colorado Politics reports, and this is what Daily Kos is reporting that the Colorado Politics says, the result was one very successful year in Colorado politics. Democrats were able to do the following. Listen to this. Pass a program that gives students from families earning under $90,000 2 free years of college. That's not just at technical schools or community colleges, but it also includes state-run universities. Property tax reform that provided relief for homeowners and more equitable funding for schools to make them less dependent on property taxes and the wealth of their local communities. A tax credit program for low-income families that provides $1.4 billion that's expected to drastically reduce child poverty. A bill that doubles the earned income credit for families. Changes to zoning policy to spur sustainable, affordable housing, especially in resort communities where housing costs far exceeded the incomes of many workers, and a fee on oil and gas production that goes to promoting transit conservation and renewable energy. And that's the first session. As the session draws to a close, lawmakers are still looking at collection of bills, including a plan to improve transportation for low-income areas and gun reform measures. That sounds like a productive legislative session. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. Those are actual things. Now, you may disagree with what was passed, what was signed into law. I know a lot of Republicans, particularly those who are more conservative, don't like government being sort of um, the people who actually are responsible for fixing some of these problems. They have a problem, I'm sure, with the tax credit program, right, for low income families, because the money has to come from somewhere, or doubling the earned income tax credit for families, and a tax credit program for low income families. And I'm sure a fee on oil and gas production, fossil fuels, is probably problematic, and providing 2 years free college at $90,000 if your family earns under $90,000. I'm sure that's problematic because they're thinking that's just tax and spend, tax and spend, tax and spend. So I get that, but it is still a productive session of a legislative body in terms of what they were able to produce legislatively, right? They got things passed. And now voters will get to decide whenever they vote in legislative elections whether those were good things or bad things, but they are at least things. At the other end of the spectrum, now Tennessee is now the other state that they're saying is under Republican control, and got very little done in the way of actually changing the lives of actual people. At the other end of the spectrum, Tennessee's 113th General Assembly has 102 Republicans, 27 in the Senate, 75 in the House, and only 30 Democrats, 6 in the Senate and 30 in the House. Many of you know that there were 2 members in the House portion of the Tennessee legislature, that 2 African-American leaders who were thrown out had to run for election and got their seats back, and are constantly in the well, fighting the good fight for progressive causes in that state. And you should follow them as well to learn sort of what's going on in that state. But what does Tennessee have to show for their session? Here's what they passed in the Tennessee legislature this past session. More guns in the classroom with a bill to arm teachers after a shooter killed students and staff at a private Christian school in Nashville. A law requiring teachers to out trans students with fines to teachers and schools who don't comply. Gun reforms were shot down in favor of fortifying campuses by adding alarms that can be sounded to indicate an active shooter situation. Required age-appropriate firearms training for children starting in pre-kindergarten. The governor's PEP program, a bill to destroy public education, again, this is Daily Kos saying this, and replace it with education vouchers, didn't make it through the session, but $114 million in funding was set aside for the next session just in case it does pass. Now, the article goes on to say that Colorado and Tennessee are just 2 states, but they showcase the difference between Democrat and Republican policies. Colorado voters got education, housing, tax reform, and more funding for transportation, energy, and the environment. And Tennessee voters got a legislature that concentrated on culture war issues and guns, lots of guns. Now, listen, folks, I am certain that there were other things that the Tennessee legislature passed in terms of policy that were just beyond the social issues. Obviously, Daily Kos is making a point. Obviously, Daily Kos is a progressive platform, and of course they're only going to talk about those things. And I'm sure in Colorado there were probably some social issue things that were passed that I'm sure a Republican would say, we're against that as well. My glasses crooked; they feel like they're crooked. But fair is fair, right? And so I understand that, but it is stark to me that at the very least, what was passed in Colorado were real things that could change the trajectory of a family's life in terms of college, in terms of tax credit. And, that's a tax cut essentially for working class people, and sort of the overabundance, the over-reliance on passing things that are social issues and social policies, where you look at a state like Tennessee in terms of infant mortality rates or education, or even access to technology like broadband in various communities, having paved roads and those kind of things. A lot of those things are not done in a lot of these states that are run by Republicans, red states. In fact, the federal government, if you look at any kind of honest chart that talks about, how much money red states send to the federal government versus how much money they have to get back because they don't really put in and tax dollars to the federal government, what they actually need in terms of tax subsidies to fund the operation of their states. they certainly don't put in blue states in a lot of ways are subsidizing what happens in red states. But I thought that was an interesting article about how legislatures run by one party, typically with the same governor from that same party in office, the kind of tangible things they do to change people's lives versus sort of one other party sort of honing in on social issues. Tell me what you think, though. I think it's clear, in my opinion, that Democrats run states better. I think there are states that do need some help. I do think states like California may need a dose of Republican moderation on some things to get certain things like the homeless issue dealt with in cities like LA and San Francisco. I know the governor could, the mayor Bass and LA could use some additional help from the state to ameliorate those issues. Obviously, there are other issues that I think we could point to that weren't addressed in places like Colorado and in Tennessee, depending on the party. But I think when we look at does government work and who does it work for, that these issues and articles like this are important so it can inform residents and voters who they should be voting for in 2024 and beyond, and especially in the elections that actually matter most, which are local elections, in terms of what party and what government what party actually delivers on results, and what party and what government actually can do for you to change your life and to give you a reason to vote and to participate. But subscribe, like, and comment here. Tell me what you think in your comments. I'm happy to respond in kind. Please make sure that you stay curious. And also remember, think it ain't illegal yet.